Didn't realize the damage silence could do until it happened to me. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, and it didn't arrive with warning. It came quietly, disguised as nothing. One simple message sent, one small hope attached to it, and then nothing in return. At first, my mind tried to protect me. It whispered excuses, soft and reasonable. Maybe they were busy. Maybe they saw it and planned to reply later. Maybe I was overthinking. Psychology calls this denial a defense mechanism, the brain's first attempt to avoid emotional pain. But denial doesn't last long when silence stretches beyond minutes into hours. The moment I saw the word seen, without a reply, something shifted inside me. My heart rate changed, my breathing felt shallow, and a strange heaviness settled in my chest. I didn't know it then, but my brain had already interpreted the silence as rejection. Neuroscience explains that when someone important ignores us, the brain activates the same neural pathways involved in physical pain. That's why it didn't feel imaginary. It felt real, sharp, and uncomfortable, like a wound without blood. I checked my phone again and again, not because I needed an answer, but because my brain was desperate for reassurance. Silence removes certainty, and the human brain hates uncertainty more than bad news. With every passing moment, my thoughts became louder. I replayed the message I had sent, analyzing every word, every punctuation mark, wondering if I had said too much or too little. The silence wasn't just absence of sound. It was presence of fear. Fear of being unwanted, forgotten, or replaced. Social psychology explains that humans are wired to seek connection for survival, so when connection is threatened, the brain reacts as if survival itself is at risk. That's why my body responded before logic could intervene. My stomach tightened, my appetite disappeared, and even simple tasks felt heavy. I told myself to stay calm, but my nervous system didn't listen. The silence was speaking a language my brain understood too well. It was saying, "You are not important enough to respond to." Even though no one had actually said that, my brain believed it. That was the first lesson I learned. Silence doesn't need words to hurt. It lets the brain do all the damage on its own. By the second day, the silence had transformed into something darker. The initial shock was gone, replaced by slow, constant anxiety. My brain no longer searched for excuses for them. Instead, it turned inward and started questioning me. This is where psychology becomes especially cruel. When someone ignores us, the brain often uses internal attribution, meaning it assumes we are the cause of the problem. I began blaming myself for things I couldn't even name. Maybe I was too emotional. Maybe I cared too much. Maybe I wasn't interesting enough to deserve a reply. These thoughts didn't arrive aggressively. They crept in quietly and settled like truth. Each unanswered hour reinforced them. Scientifically, this happens because silence disrupts dopamine release. Dopamine is the chemical associated with reward and validation. When we expect a response and don't receive it, dopamine drops and cortisol, the stress hormone, rises. That chemical imbalance explains why my body felt restless while my mind felt tired. I couldn't sleep properly, and when I did, my dreams replayed old conversations, searching for clues I had missed. During the day, I smiled in front of others, but inside, my self-worth was quietly collapsing. Emotional pain often hides behind normal behavior, making it invisible to everyone except the person experiencing it. I started questioning my value, not just to them, but in general. That's the danger of being ignored. The pain doesn't stay limited to one relationship. It spreads. It touches your identity. My confidence weakened, my voice felt smaller, and I began editing myself even in unrelated conversations, afraid of saying the wrong thing again. Psychology explains that prolonged silence can trigger rejection sensitivity, a heightened fear of abandonment based on past emotional experiences. The silence wasn't just about this one person anymore. It was awakening old wounds I thought had healed. Childhood memories of being unheard resurfaced, reminding me that my brain stores emotional pain carefully, waiting for similar situations to reopen it. I realized that being ignored doesn't just hurt in the present. It reactivates every moment you've ever felt unimportant. The mind doesn't separate timelines. Pain is pain, and silence keeps feeding it. The worst part was that even after recognizing the pain, I couldn't stop waiting. I hated myself for checking my phone repeatedly, for feeling hope every time the screen lit up, even when I knew it probably wasn't them. This is where psychology explains something uncomfortable: intermittent reinforcement. When responses are unpredictable, the brain becomes addicted to anticipation. It's the same mechanism behind gambling addiction. The brain tells itself, maybe next time. That single possibility keeps hope alive, even when evidence suggests otherwise. Every vibration triggered a rush of adrenaline. Every disappointment deepened the craving. I wasn't waiting for love. I was waiting for relief. Relief from uncertainty, relief from self-doubt, relief from the emotional tension that silence had created. My rational mind knew that waiting was hurting me, but emotional dependency doesn't respond to logic. It responds to patterns. And the pattern had been set. Attention once given, now withdrawn. That withdrawal made my brain chase it harder. I began associating their response with emotional safety. Without it, I felt unstable. Psychology refers to this as anxious attachment activation. When someone with emotional importance pulls away, the brain enters survival mode, prioritizing reconnection over self-respect. That's why waiting felt automatic, not chosen. I felt embarrassed by my own reactions, but shame only made the pain worse. The truth was simple but difficult to accept. Silence had created an addiction, and my brain was suffering withdrawal. I wasn't weak. My nervous system was reacting exactly as it was designed to. Humans aren't built to be ignored by those they care about. That realization didn't end the pain, but it helped me stop blaming myself for feeling it. As days passed, the silence grew heavier, almost loud. It filled every quiet moment, especially at night. That's when my brain became most active, replaying memories without permission. Their voice, their words, the way they once made me feel seen. Neuroscience explains this as an unfinished emotional loop. The brain seeks closure to process emotional events. When closure isn't provided, the brain replays the memory repeatedly, hoping to understand it. That's why silence can feel more painful than conflict. An argument ends. Silence lingers. I realized then that being ignored isn't neutral behavior. It's emotional abandonment. Social rejection activates the same fear centers in the brain as physical danger. Historically, being excluded from a group meant death, so our brains evolved to treat it seriously. That ancient fear still exists. That's why my pain felt primal, overwhelming, and difficult to explain. I wasn't just sad. I felt erased. I questioned whether I had ever mattered at all. Silence has a way of rewriting history, making good memories feel like lies. The more time passed, the more I understood that the silence was changing me. I became quieter, more guarded, less willing to reach out. Emotional withdrawal became my defense. Psychology shows that prolonged emotional neglect can lead to numbness, a protective response to prevent further pain. I could feel it happening. Caring began to feel dangerous. One night, exhausted from thinking, I stopped checking my phone. Not because the pain was gone, but because something finally clicked. Psychology offered a truth I hadn't wanted to accept. People often ignore others not because they don't care, but because they don't know how to face discomfort. Silence is avoidance. It protects the person giving it, not the person receiving it. That realization shifted my pain. I stopped interpreting silence as proof of my worth and started seeing it as evidence of their emotional limitations. This didn't excuse the hurt, but it explained it. I understood that caring deeply isn't a weakness. It's a sign of emotional capacity. The shame I had been carrying didn't belong to me. My nervous system had been responding normally to emotional neglect. For the first time, I felt compassion for myself instead of blame. Healing didn't arrive suddenly. It came slowly, quietly, without announcements. I learned to validate my own emotions instead of waiting for external confirmation. Psychology calls this self-regulation. I reminded myself that my value doesn't depend on someone else's response time. Gradually, my nervous system calmed. The chest tightness eased. The constant checking stopped. Not because they finally replied, but because I stopped giving silence the power to define me. I accepted that some people cannot offer the closure we deserve. And acceptance, I learned, is sometimes the most powerful form of healing. Silence no longer felt like a verdict. It felt like information. And that information helped me choose myself.